The Yeshiva is very honored to welcome today a very close friend and a tremendous leader for the Jewish people, Rav Efrem Goldberg. Rabbi Goldberg is the rabbi of one of the largest communities in North America, and he's not even known most famously for that, even though in the area, in Boca Raton, of course he's known, his leadership is very much felt there, but his leadership has made waves across the globe. To the point I remember the tragic death of Rav Leo's wife and daughters. So he mentioned Rabbi Goldberg's Shirim and Umuna that helped him through that period of time. Immediately after, I recall that Rabbi Goldberg got on a plane together with Shai Shachter, and they came to Menachem Abel, and it was very, very, Rabbi Leo D, very, very heartfelt by the whole community here in Eretz Yisrael, because his connection to Eretz Yisrael is one that is felt, that is real, that is strong. Recently, or in the beginning of the war, a few months ago, he came with over 100 duffel bags of stuff for Chayalim that his community got together, and a number of the rabbis from his community came and they made an effect. We see him in the news, in the local news in Florida, caring about what's going on with the Jewish community there and the Jewish community at large in America. And most recently, again with the war, he's very outspoken with his connection, his strong connection to the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, to our Chayalim, and every place that they are. So it is a great, great honor for us to have a person who is a wonderful speaker, but more important than his ability to speak and the important messages that he has is his true care and love for all of Klal Yisrael. So we are very proud to welcome Rabbi Goldberg. Stand behind the beam. Good.
I want to thank Boaz, the Rosh Yeshiva, for his exaggerated, exceedingly kind words. My relationship actually began here in Eretz Yisrael. We were at the Bris Kollel together, in the same Beis Medrash, the same Beit Midrash, learning together and living next door to one another. And it's extraordinary each time to come back to the yeshiva, to see it grow and to see everything that's happening. And you all know, but I'll say it anyway, how lucky and fortunate you are to be part of the yeshiva, which is so much more than the yeshiva. To see the chamal, to see the difference, the soldiers that have come through this yeshiva and are connected with the yeshiva, and the efforts to help them and sustain them and keep that connection really transforms your experience here from just a gap year in yeshiva in Israel to be part of this effort, to be part of this movement, to be part of this people, to be part of this land, to be part of this historic moment. And that really makes this yeshiva not only unusual, but really unique in that way, something I'm sure one of the reasons you chose it, and what you're experiencing and benefiting from it, and for which you and all of us are incredibly, incredibly grateful. I want to dedicate our short Divrei Torah this afternoon Leiloi Nishmas Esther Tehila Bas Rav Gavriel Pinchas, the first Yurtzeit, a very special young girl whom we miss. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz was the great Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir. When he was a young man, a Bacher, still yet in Europe, he went to visit his uncle, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Grodno, the Rosh Yeshiva of Novardik. He was in Grodno. Rav Avram Yafen. And he went to that yeshiva and he asked his uncle, who is the greatest Bacher, who is the greatest student, who is the most outstanding? His uncle thought about it and he looked around the Beis Medrash and he pointed to one and he said, that's the biggest Amkan. He's the deepest learner. He asked the most penetrating, the deepest questions. He's the most analytical. And he said, the one over there, he's the biggest masmid, the most diligent. There are no hours of day or night. He's sitting and studying all the time. And the one over there, he's the biggest baki. He knows the most, an encyclopedic mind. He's able to call from all over the width and breadth of Torah. And the one over there, he has the greatest Yirah Shamayim, the greatest awe of Hashem. You can see it in his face and his behavior and his midos and his everything. So Rav Chaim Shmulevitz asked his uncle, okay, so out of all of them, you just named different ones. Who's the greatest? Which is the most up-and-coming superstar? Which is the superstar student in the yeshiva? And he answered, he said, none of the above. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz thought to himself, none of the above? You just named the Amkan and the Masmin and the Baki and the Yirei Shammai. What do you mean none of the above? He said, come with me. He took him to the corner of the Beis Medrash and he's pointed to a young man, a young student, whose head was buried in his Gemara, was learning. And he said, he is the superstar of the Beis Medrash, of the Yeshiva. So Reb Chaim Shlit'a says, what's special about him? He's not the Baki, he's not the Mumcha, he's not the Amkan, he's not the Yirei Shammai. He already highlighted others who represent or stand for those qualities. What makes him stand out? He said, that one, he's the biggest mevakesh. He's the hungriest. He's got the strongest drive. He's got an insatiable appetite for Torah. He's unsatisfied on his search, on his yearning and learning and growing, and his wanting to see the emes, to find the Dvar Hashem. He doesn't stop, not for a moment. He is the biggest mevakesh in the yeshiva, and therefore he's the most outstanding. And it turned out that young man sitting in the corner would become the great Stipler Gaon. Rav Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, the father of Rav Chaim, the great Stipler, a Gaon, a Gadol in his own right, who certainly also and ultimately embodied those other qualities, but at that time and at that young age, what made him stand out and what made him be outstanding was his being a mevakesh. That thirst, that yearning, that desire to be a seeker and a searcher, to be curious and inquisitive, to want to see the truth, to want to hear the messages that are being broadcast all around. Chaim Shlavitz doesn't tell that story in his Sichos Musar, but he does on our Parsha tell us that's what also made Yisro outstanding. Yisro was extraordinary because Yisro was a mevakesh. He was a searcher. Torah tells us that Yisro says, now I know that Hashem is true among all of the gods. And Rashi says, Shelo hiniach avodah zarah, there was no avodah zarah, no idolatry, no religion that he hadn't explored, that he hadn't contemplated, that he hadn't investigated. You can't help but think, Yisro is a great man. Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, he drops everything he's doing. He has a position of prominence and power. He's an influencer in Midyan. He leaves it all to come join the Jewish people. And we say something so demeaning about him. We have to insult him and memorialize him as being an Ovid Avodah Zarah. There was no greater idolater who had explored all the idolatries in the world than Yisro. Says the author of Kelm, the Torah is not insulting Yisro, quite the contrary. The Torah is complimenting him. When the Torah tells us that he had an insatiable appetite for truth, and he would search, and he would investigate, and he would analyze, and he would ask, and he would look, and he would learn until he could discover it. There was nothing. He kept going and going and going until he found the truth. That's who Yisro was, and that is a character trait that is critical to truly be engaged in the process of learning Torah. It's therefore even a prerequisite to Torah. We know there's a debate. Yesh muktam amucher b'Torah. Is the Torah written chronologically, or is the Torah written thematically? Does it record the historical events in order, or is it trying to communicate or convey a message, and the order and chronology is less important? That comes out and plays out at the beginning of our Parsha, because Yisro, the beginning, Vayishma Yisro es kol asher asa Hashem, Yisro heard all that Hashem had done, and therefore he got up and he came. When did Yisro hear? What did he hear? Rashi quotes the Gemara in Zvachim, 3 opinions. Kriyas Yamsuf, maybe he heard about how Hashem had intervened, he suspended all the ordinary rules of nature, and the sea split. And he heard about something extraordinary and he had to check out, who are these people? What happened here? I've got to see for myself. Second opinion is Milchemes Amalek. He heard about the war, the battle with Amalek. And that's a peculiar answer or reason, because the truth is that battle, that war, didn't end favorably for the Jewish people. At best in our Pasha, that war ended in a draw. We survived, but so did Amalek. We know that because we're still fighting Amalek today. The war rages on with the Amalek of our generation. So what moved and what impressed and what inspired Yisro about Milchemes Amalek, the war with Amalek, considering we weren't defeated, but we also didn't defeat them? It's an important question for another time. But the third opinion is, what did Yisro hear? He heard about Kabbalas HaTorah. He heard about the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. Which begs the question, did Yisro come after the Torah was given? Or did Yisro come before the Torah was given? Open a Chumash, and it sounds like Yisro came before the Torah was given. In our Parsha, Yisro's arrival is what opens the Parsha, and then we're told about Har Sinai in the middle of the Parsha. So it's a machlokes, a debate in the Gemara. It's a debate between the Ibn Ezra and the Ramban. But according to the Ibn Ezra, Yisro really came after he heard about the giving of the Torah. You can't help but wonder, then why did the Torah record Yisro's arrival as being first. If we abandon the chronology, if we go out of order, it's because the Torah is trying to communicate something. There's a message, there's a meaning. So what is the Torah communicating by putting Yisro, his arrival, and joining the Jewish people before Kabbalas HaTorah, that was critical for us to know before we can read and relive our own Kabbalas HaTorah? What was it that was special about Yisro? And the answer is, it was exactly this. That Yisro was a mavakish. He was hungry. He had an insatiable appetite for truth. He was curious and inquisitive. He asked and he learned. He listened and he was transformed. Vayishma Yisro as kol asher asa. Yisro heard all that God had done. But Yisro wasn't the only one who heard. Yisro didn't have access to some state secret about what had happened. The whole world heard. How do we know that? You said it this morning. We say it every day. We read it last week. Shamu amim yirgazun. The whole nations of the world, they all. I don't know if they watched it on Fox or on CNN, if they saw it in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. I'm not sure which alert or what app or what they were scrolling through. But everyone saw the same headline about the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea and these extraordinary events that happened. So what made Yisro special? What made him stand out? What made him different? And Chazal tell us, look at one critical word. Torah doesn't wonder, Chazal don't wonder, Mashmu Ashama, what did Yisro hear? Mashmu Ashama Uba. What did Yisro hear that made him stop, get up, pack up, and make an enormous, radical, transformational change in his life? To leave and abandon all that he was and all that he had accomplished, all the power and all the prominence, and to come check it out for himself. You know what everyone else did? Shamu amim yirgazun. Everybody else, they were scrolling, they saw the video, they read the headline, they heard the story, and you know what they did? They then sipped another sip of their cappuccino or their latte or their coffee. They turned the page of the newspaper. For a moment, yirgazun, they'd sit there, they shook. For a moment, they were impressed, they were inspired. Wow, what a story. They forwarded it to a friend, and as soon as they hit forward, they moved on. They turned the page literally or figuratively, they forgot, and they moved on to the next story, to the next headline, to the next news cycle, to whatever was going to tug on their heartstring next, to whatever story was the next to pop up in their WhatsApp. They moved on. What made Yisro different, and the lesson we need to learn from him, is not Mashmu Ashama, what did he hear, but Mashmu Ashama Uba. What and how did he hear in such a way that it wasn't just hearing, but it was listening. It wasn't just sound waves that went one ear and out the other, but in between there was a processing. In between he was absorbing and integrating. In between he was stopping and asking himself, what does this mean? And what does this mean for me? What is the bigger message? What is Hashem communicating to the world? And how should it impact and change me? How should it leave me forever different? Mashmu Ashama, not just what did he hear, everybody heard, but Mashmu Ashama Uba, what did he hear in such a way that he said, for now on and forever, I'm no longer the same person that I was. Who am I? We can't be the same Jews we were on October 6th. We're October 8th Jews now. We've lived through, we've seen, you here, of course, in our precious homeland, on the front line collectively, and those from this yeshiva and all of our family who are literally on those front lines, and those who've heroically paid the highest price that we can't begin to imagine. We can't go back to being October 6 Jews ever again. Mashmu Shama, but Uba, how does it change us? How does it impact us? How does it change the trajectory of our life? How does it impact the sense of vision we have for our life? How does it impact the mission of who we are and our life? Some, many, no yeshiva more than this one, will stay here, will enlist in the future of the Jewish people, the next chapter or book of Tanakh being written about today in Eretz Yisrael. Others, for whatever reason, will not. But we must, wherever we are, be changed forever, because we're listening to the message of this moment. We're listening not only to the lesson of the shared history, but wanting to be part of the mission of our shared and our future destiny. Yisro, this parsha, this moment, this week, this time is teaching us that we can't let these experiences and these events, these moments of our people, of our history, we can't pass and be the same. Mashmu Shama Uba. We have to be able to hear Hashem talking to us. He talks to us most through the Torah, through the incredible Svarim and the amazing Rebbeim, and the Shiurim and the Chavrusas and the learning that we do. Hashem is talking directly to us. An ongoing conversation that never, ever ends. When we daven, we're talking to Him. When we learn, we're listening to Him talking to us. We have to be able to hear Him. In the conversations with our friends, we have to be able to learn that quality, that power, that character of listening. And we have to be able to listen to our own inner voice, to listen to ourselves, to listen to the Chelek Elokah Mimal Mamish, the Neshama Tzem Elokim, to our own soul that's screaming out something to us about who we're meant to be, and the lives we're meant to live, and who we want to become, because it's time. We're not kids anymore. It's time to grow up. Not only your age and stage of life, I'm talking to myself and those older than me. October 7th is yelling, grow up. It's not the same world. Take life seriously. Who do we want to be? What difference do we want to make? And what part do we want to play in the future of our people? That's the legacy and that's the lesson of Yisro. And that's why even if he arrives only first after Kabbalas HaTorah, the Torah puts him first. Because the Torah is telling us, you know what the prerequisite? You know what the introduction to Kabbalas HaTorah is? You can't learn Torah and listen to Torah if you don't have a Koach HaShmiya, if you don't know what it means to listen. What does it mean to listen? The Maharal describes what the Koach HaShmiya, what the power of listening is. Maharal writes, I don't know any tech guys here, but if you have a stereo and you plug in the input and output at the same time, you know what you get? Static. You get static. What do you have to do? You have to turn off the output and turn up the input. That's listening. Most of us, our output and input are on at the same time, and in most of the conversations we have in our lives, what is really there is static. What is listening? For too many people, listening is just the break in between when we get to speak. That's all that listening is. It's a pause in between our own speaking. And when someone else is talking, we're not really listening. All we're doing is thinking how we're going to respond, what story that reminds us of, how we're going to disagree, what we have to say. But there's output being generated even while we're supposedly taking in input. Real listening, writes the Maharal, not with the stereo metaphor, is to shut down, to lower the output and to raise the input. To listen, to truly hear, to absorb, to integrate, to receive whatever's being said by a Rebbe, by the text of the Torah, by our own inner voice, which is so important. We live in three dimensions, Ben Adam L'Malka, Ben Adam L'Chavero, but also Ben Adam L'Atzmo. Researchers, I don't know exactly how they do such studies, but they found, do you know how many words we say to ourselves from the moment we wake up in the morning? Just think about this morning. It's only, what time is it?
It is 12:51.
12:51. That clock is right. 12:51. From the moment you woke up this morning, should I hit snooze? Do I wake up? Is there a later minyan? I'll learn better if I could sleep a little bit more time. Who says minyan is really even a chiyuv or a mid? How many conversations did we have with ourselves? Should I shower? Do I need to shower? I'm in Yeshiva. I showered last week. Whatever the conversations that we're having, it's cold outside. We say millions of words to ourselves a day. Not hundreds and not thousands. We are constantly in conversation with ourselves. But too many of us, so many of us are so uncomfortable in our own skin that we're not even listening to our own inner voice. And so we put in AirPods. We always have noise or a podcast playing. There's always something going on because we can't and don't want to even hear our own inner voice. Hashem speaking through ourselves or ourselves speaking. Where do you have the greatest breakthrough? I know for myself. Trying to solve a problem or you're thinking about something you have to do. Not Torah, of course, in these places. Shower,
Sleep.
where else? Falling asleep. And where's the third place? While davening. Boom, boom, boom. Nailed it. The three. For me. The place of my biggest thought breakthroughs are in the shower, falling asleep, and while davening. What do all three have in common? What's that Tzara Shava? There's no other noise. You're not listening to anybody else. You're not talking to someone else. You're not listening to anything else. Those 3 moments, you are alone with you and your thoughts. You're in conversation with yourself, and that's where breakthrough happens. That's where we're wrestling with ourselves. That's where we're listening to ourselves. Yisro teaches us the power of listening to others, to Hashem, and to ourselves. In fact, when Yisro arrives, like a good father-in-law, he offers some unsolicited advice. But in an unusual act of a son-in-law, Moshe says, I welcome it. What a great idea. I'm a son-in-law and a father-in-law now, so I'm allowed to make those jokes. I'm on both sides. Yisro comes and he tells Moshe, he says, Moshe, what's going on over here? You got to line out your tent around the entire camp. What are you doing? And he tells him, you should really delegate, create a hierarchy, involve others. What was bothering Yisro? What did he see that no one else saw? And why was his solution so important that Moshe was persuaded? It was compelling. Moshe accepted it and he implemented it right away. What was bothering Yisro? Yisro says to himself, there's no way with a line out the tent around the whole camp. The people are coming to you with conflicts. Problems and conflicts they have with others, conflicts they're having with themselves. You can't help them resolve it if you're not listening to them. And there's no way you could truly be listening to them when you've got a line out the tent and around the camp and going out everywhere. Yisro is the embodiment, the paradigm of the koach hashmiya, the capacity, the will, the insatiable appetite, the curiosity to listen, to learn, to seek, to search, to, in the words of Stephen Covey, in the 6th habit of the 7 habits of highly effective people, to first seek to understand before being understood. We all want to be understood. We have opinions and dayas and shittas and attitudes and approaches and solutions. We have so much to say to the world. But do we first seek to understand before being understood? Do we want to hear what the world and what people and what the Torah HaKadosha has to say and what it's telling us? So Yisro is bothered. There's no way you could be listening. And he tells Moshe, you need a system, delegate. You need to be able to break it up so that people can really be heard and listened to. Only then will their problems really be resolved. And Moshe says, Taki, you're right. And the Torah places all of this, Yisro's arrival, because Mashmua Shama Uba, that Yisro listened and heard in such a way that he got up and he came. And the Torah tells us that story and the story of his advice to Moshe, all before we receive a Torah. You know why? Because we can't genuinely and authentically hear and listen and learn Torah if we haven't first cultivated how to turn off the output and turn up the input. To not project onto the Torah all our preconceived notions, to not tell Torah we know better and we have all the answers, to not try to squeeze and make the Torah conform to our opinions, but to truly turn off the output, turn up the input and say, Torah, talk to me. Hashem, talk to me through your Torah. How do you want me to see this world? How do you want me to understand myself? How do you want me to regulate how I interact and how I live? How do you want me to discover what is my mission? What is my purpose? What am I meant to be? What difference am I meant to make? I'm listening. I'm listening, Hashem. I'm listening through your Torah HaKadosha. I'm listening through history. I'm listening through nature. I'm listening through my own neshama. I'm listening to you talk to me all the time. So Chazal tell us in Avos that one of the 48 ways that Torah is acquired, one of the Memchas Kinyanei Torah is Shmias HaOzen. You can't acquire and learn Torah if you don't have a listening ear. If you can't turn off the output and turn up the input, if you don't really know how to listen, you cannot possibly acquire the Torah. Hashem has been talking to us since our Sinai, and it hasn't stopped yet. He's still talking to us. Every sefer on every makom, every rebbe and every shir, every engagement and encounter we have with Torah, we're going back to our Sinai and we are continuing that conversation. Parshas V'eschana, when Moshe recounts Kabbalah Torah, he describes it as a kol gadol v'lo yasaf. The giving of the Torah, a moment of our Sinai, that seminal moment of revelation. It was a great sound, a great voice. Translate, what does the word lo yasaf mean? The Ramban says lo yasaf means it was never repeated, it was never replicated. It was a one-time event in all of history, that level of revelation. But the Targum translates differently. The Targum says lo yasaf, lo pasak. Hashem started speaking and he never stopped. The only question is, are we listening? Is our antenna extended and are we picking up the sound waves? He spoke in a way that continues to reverberate until today. The question is if we're listening, and if we listen, we'll hear it. We'll hear it through Torah, we'll hear it in history, we'll hear it when we're looking at what's happening in the world right now, not only as some of our enemies in the world is conditioned to try to make us look. You know, if you live down here, then all you see are statistics and data and headlines and information and political pundits and opinions. What's happening in Gaza, what's the likelihood of the North, what's going to be with the escalation of Iran and the US, what will be with anti-Semitism in America and Ivy League presidents. That's the whole world down here. And it's important. It has to inform us and motivate us and inspire us. It's important. That's all down here. But we are living in a great moment that if we're really listening, then you can hear that up here there's something bigger happening. There's a clash between good and evil, right and wrong, just and unjust. There's a clash of energies in this world where Ribono Shalom is speaking to us. He's talking to us. Kadosh Baruch Hu is screaming out something to us. Question is, are we listening? It's a kol gadol. It's in a loud voice. V'lo yasaf, and it never ended. And the only question is, are we paying attention? Are we listening? Are we like Yisro or Mavakesh? Are we tuned in and plugged in? Are we going to become October 8th Jews, changed and transformed and different forever? Maybe shifting the trajectory we were on radically, maybe pivoting slightly, maybe finally growing up, taking ourselves seriously, having a picture of who we can be, like at Har Sinai, v'chol ha'am ro'im es hakolos. All of the people saw the sounds. You don't see sounds, you hear sounds, and you see sights. Why is the Torah described as seeing the sounds? The Barbanel says it was like a hologram. As each of the dibros were said out loud, you could see the words projected like a hologram. But others say, you know what Chol ha'am ro'im es hakolos means? It means you have Rebbeim, we have Torah teachers who speak in such a way that when they're talking about Shabbos, you don't just hear words about Shabbos, you can picture your Shabbos table. You picture your best Shabbos yet. When you hear about davening, you don't just hear words or a translation of davening, you can picture your best davening that is yet to happen. When you hear, you're not just hearing words, it's creating and crafting a vision, a picture of who you could be. We have to continue to hear that sound of Har Sinai and be ro'am es hakolos, to listen in a bechina of seeing. That the listening is so focused and so effective, the listening is so deep and the listening is so transformational that the listening is on the level of seeing a truth. In a doma shmiya l're'iyah, we know that it's not hearing that's believing, it's seeing that's believing. We have to listen to history and listen to this moment and listen to the Torah that we're learning in such a way that it paints a picture that we can see who we are and who we can be, how we can live, and the difference that we're meant to make. Hashem is speaking to us always through the Torah's Chaim, the beautiful Torah that we have. He's speaking to us in this moment, in the extraordinary time that we find ourselves. And we have to ask ourselves, how are we listening in such a way that we will be impacted? Are we that best bacher in the yeshiva of life that like Yisro, we are a mavakish, we're thirsty, we're seeking, we're searching, we're yearning for the truth that doesn't go in one ear and out the other, but a truth that will change us, a truth that will transform us forever. I close by telling you that I'm on the team that advocates you should stay here as long as you can. Get out every week, every month, every year that you can stay in Eretz Yisrael, you stay. And the more we stay forever, the better. And make room, because the Mitzvah Hashem will all come join soon. Stay as long as you can. But the reality of life is that for some, they're going back to America. And I want to share with you in closing that if your reality, for whatever reason, is you're going back to America, consider Yeshiva of South Florida. We had the great Schus, Rabbi Sini Shabtai and I. Rabbi Shabtai is the amazing Menahel without whom we wouldn't have a Yeshiva. A year and a half ago, we opened the Yeshiva in Boca, and we did it to fill the following niche. A small place, a warm place. Baruch Hashem, it's not small. We have a wonderful group of Bachrim, but a warm, Rebbeim are accessible, immersive experience that is a continuation of what you're experiencing, not the Avira of Eretz Yisrael, but for many people, they think, Israel is where I grew. I'm going to learn in life, but I'm done growing. We want a growth for life. You're not done growing. We're never done growing. So to immerse in 3-star midday, morning, afternoon, evening, those who want college in conjunction with Turo, we have a full Turo offline degree, and Rebbeim that are accessible and available, and a dormitory next to the Beis Medrash and the Chadar Ochel, and a real immersive, inspiring, warm, energized, enthusiastic yeshiva that's in a place that many of you are not from, and therefore you're not distracted or competing for your time or attention or going home. A place that hasn't held others back. We have one boy who's married and several who are dating. We'll be able to continue that as well. We have brochures. We're happy to stay and answer questions. If anyone's going back after Pesach, we have a nice group who are joining the yeshiva for the Zman after Pesach. If you'd like to find out more about that. I hope you stay and we all join soon. We should be here forever. But for those who need to, or even for a short time are coming back, we're happy to answer any questions. May we continue to hear that Kol Gadol V'lo Yasaf, that great sound of the Ribono Shalom speaking to us, should reverberate through our ears and through our being and transform us to find our mission and our purpose, to bring us to a time in Mirz Hashem, B'Geula Shlema, V'Yer V'Yameinu Shekar.
Amen.